My name is J.J. Barrett, and I'm with WVU Extension here in Wood County.
And I'm John David Johnson, and I'm in WVU Extension Agent in Jackson County.
And we'd like to welcome everyone to the Cowboy Coffee Break. And today we have our special guest and a good friend of mine, Chris Penrose. Should we say Dr. Chris Penrose?
I'm not a doctor,
Chris?
I'm not a doctor.
But you are a full professor at the Ohio State University. That is correct.
Correct.
That's right. So
yep, I managed to do that, but I'm not a doctor. So yep.
Chris, we're glad to have you on.
Thank you.
To have a little bit of background on Chris, he is a veteran of the Ohio State University Extension in Morgan County. He has been, how many, do you have 30 years in, Chris?
32.
32 years over in Morgan County. Of course, he was born and raised there and has a farm in Morgan County, a beef cow-calf operation. Chris specializes in forages and grazing management, especially with stockpiling. That is correct, Chris?
Yes, sir.
He's done a lot of, and he does most of his research over there at Belle Valley. I'm familiar with that research branch of OARDC. Before we get started, Chris, what's some of the research that you've been working on over there at Belle Valley and how many head of cattle do they have over there?
Okay. Thank you, JJ. Is it being recorded? I haven't hit the proceed thing. So okay. I'm not sure how many head of cattle that they have over there. They kind of come and go. I think there's several hundred. They also have another satellite farm that has several thousand acres. Some of it is strip mine. So I'm not sure exactly how much that they have there, but I basically spent my career doing some research on stockpiling, especially fescue. We've done stuff with urea, ammonium sulfate. We've done stuff with agrotane. And really the bottom line with all of that is, and we've done research. The latest research we did on that was 3 years, 3 sites. So it's a pretty tight study. And the only thing that we can tell with any certainty is that adding nitrogen increases yields. That's it. Agrotane didn't show any significant differences. It showed some in some years. Ammonium sulfate didn't show anything different. And of course, ammonium sulfate's twice as expensive as urea is. The data says put urea down and don't worry about it. I think there's some stuff out of the Noble Institute, and some of our friends over at Virginia Tech have done some work that shows that urea doesn't volatilize as much as we thought. So, and I haven't seen any significant differences in protein. Now and that was at 90 days. I'm willing to bet at 60 or 30 days, the protein contents would be significantly different. But as time goes on, I think the protein starts dwindling on it. We've also done.
If I can stop you there, for any of our audience, why are we adding the agrotane to the urea as the
agrotane is what's called an urease inhibitor, which helps keep the urea from volatilizing. It's just a liquid. You put a small amount in and mix it in with the urea. A lot of the fertilizer dealerships use that, and that helps keep the urea stable until it gets a good rain on it. And it was actually my hypothesis that there would be significant differences with agrotane. And while we have seen some differences, it's not statistically significant at the confidence level of 95%.
Yeah, and Chris, of course, our audience would like to know what's the cost difference per ton. Say, I go up to the co-op and I get 3 or 2 ton of urea compared to if I have the agrotane added. What's the cost difference?
I don't know, JJ. That's a good question. There is a cost to it, but it's not a lot. I've always told the farmers, if you're going to, that was never a deal breaker for any of the farmers getting the agrotane put on it. There was a cost, but not a lot. But the data is showing now that it's probably not worth it. So, just urea. And the interesting thing is you don't want to put the urea down when there's dew on the ground. You want to make sure that it's dry, so it gets down to the ground and stays there until there is more of a decent rain. If you're putting it on when there's a dew on the ground or the grass is wet, then it'll actually start breaking down right away. So
Right.
so you kind of want to wait till the ground is dry on it.
Well, I'll start off the questions, and then I'll let John David jump in here. Of course, we're
Now,
talking
hold on
about
a second, JJ, hold on a second now.
What?
You asked me about what research we're doing down there. That's not all. We've also
we'll circle back. We'll circle back to that in a minute.
Circle back. We've also completed a timed mowing study to see the impact on weed control. We actually had these 15 by 60 foot plots where we'd go out with a batwing bush hog and
you mean for brush hogging pastures, not like for
brush hogging pastures, right? Exactly.
Okay.
You know, we did a mowing in June, July, August, September. We did an area where we did it in June and August, July and September. We had somewhere we did it every month, and then we had somewhere we didn't do it at all. And you know, the bottom line is that August and September mowing, if we're mowing twice, the August and September mowing seems to help control the weeds the best. Cocklebur was a big problem there, and I don't care how close you mow it, cocklebur is still going to set seeds. And there is a new herbicide coming out called Pro Clova that is very deadly on the cocklebur, but it doesn't kill off the white clover. It'll end up killing off the red clover. The other thing that this mowing study didn't take into account is mowing the seed heads off of the grasses. I'm sure you know we've heard discussions over the years. A great time to mow pastures is after the grass is done setting seed heads to help stimulate the vegetative growth for the grass. So it doesn't take that into account. So you know that June and August mowing is also a good option. And the reality for all of us is we mow pastures when we have a chance to. You know, if I can get to the 1st of October and have everything mowed, I've had a great season. But you know, if you have those options, there may be some times better than others to mow. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's some interesting stuff. Go ahead.
Yep. So okay, now go ahead and ask your questions.
Of course, just like we had the rain, the cold weather, and the wind gusts here during the night, and you never know what's going to happen in the month of March and then early April. So we're talking about the transition period. Of course, I always call it the transition period when we're still feeding some hay, but we have some grass coming on. When do we turn out? Some great early season grazing management. And of course, we're going to focus on, and I sent Chris some questions with concerning early lactation cows. Of course, a lot of cow-calf producers have already into calving, right in the middle of calving season here. Chris, one of the questions I sent you a little bit about body condition scoring. What body condition do you think cows should be at calving, and how often should our producers, you know, actually take a notebook and go out and body condition score these cows?
You know, I tend to want to think, you know, we always talk about having our cattle in a body condition score of 4 to 6. I think around calving season, you probably want them in at least a 6 to a 7, probably. I think that's where we ought to shoot for. It's interesting. I've got one group of cattle that haven't been fed any hay. I fed them, the last time I fed them hay, the ones that are calving right now were last fed hay back on March 5th. And when I put them on this stockpiled field on March 5th, within 24 hours, their body condition score went up a notch because they had all the grass that they could eat. It was stockpiled fescue. I took 3 cuttings of hay off that field last year, and I started stockpiling it in August. Their body condition score went up immediately. And I'm also feeding them a couple pounds of corn a day. There's 18 cows getting 50 pounds. So they're getting about 2 to 3 pounds of corn a day. Just kind of a background, just some philosophical stuff. This is Chris the farmer and Chris the ag agent both talking here this morning. What I'm doing now all centered back to what I saw happening last May. One of the biggest things that we need to do is be able to look ahead and try to predict or try to have an idea where things are going and what's going to happen. I started taking hay off in May last year. Part of it was because of this COVID stuff, and I was home all the time, didn't have as many meetings, could take vacation more often. My 20-year-old son also was home from college. We got hay up really early. It was great quality hay, and we didn't have much of it. So we started in May knowing we were going to be short on hay over the winter months. So the first thing we did was went out and fertilized all of the fields to try to get a better second cutting, and we did. And then around the first of the year, I started feeding corn every day to stretch out my my hay supplies. A pound of corn typically can replace 2 pounds of hay. The one other problem that I didn't foresee that I caught in the late fall, when I started feeding hay, you know, last year, hay was like newspaper. The cows would fill themselves up on it and still be hungry. And we had a lot of cows in Ohio starved to death with full stomachs because the quality was so low. The hay quality this year on my farm was the best I ever had. And really? The cows were eating it like cotton candy. You know, it would pass right through them. So that was an issue. And I tried to stretch out the hay supplies. I got feeling guilty letting them go a day without hay. So I kept feeding them, and I was short on hay. So transitioning in, when is a good time to start? You know, when should we start rotating pastures? Everybody's situation's different. Mine starts next Saturday because I only have enough hay to get me through till next Friday. And this is something that I knew what was coming a long time ago. There's a lot of different ways to figure out when to start grazing and when to quit feeding hay. There's no right or wrong answers, but I like to give a hard cutoff when I'm feeding hay, and then I'll start rotating pastures. And I actually go out and graze some different hay fields. And I do rapid grazings with those hay fields. They're not in there very long, and I may graze them a couple times before I set them aside to start the hay growing. One of my secrets, I've been doing this for 35 years. There's been 1 year that I really got bit. But to me, one of the secrets is to get the cattle off those hay fields before stem elongation occurs. So I try to get them off then. There was 1 year that I got them off, and that was around April 20th, April 25th, somewhere in there. You got to have them off there by. But there was 1 year that we only had about an inch of rain between then and May, and I got hay up early, and the yields were down about 50%. Typically, they're only down about 10%, and I can actually wait a couple weeks longer to take off the hay. So if I'm not getting that stuff cut till the middle of June or later, the quality is a lot better than fields that were not grazed.
Right. Well, and we'll like they say, time will tell this year. And you know, and I think you hit a good point with you're always going to have channeling some Dr. Rayburn here. You're always going to have a balance between yield and quality. So, you know, if we get hay, yeah, you're going to have a little bit more yield if we get it made later. But yeah, if we get early May, we get hay made, sure, the quality is going to be really great. I'm going to let John David jump in here if he's got a couple questions for you, Chris.
Yep.
Well, you know, I've been just kind of enjoying watching and listening here. Kind of reminds me of Rodney Wall-Brown and John Marr's discussions. You know, they're kind of battling back and forth there. I always enjoyed watching that. But you know, for maybe some of these producers that, you know, is not as familiar with the body condition scores, and, you know, will you kind of really quickly go over that, what you're looking for on that cow, you know, and those points there, and why that is important for, you know, judging where the nutrient level is on the cow? Because, you know, JJ said, channeling Rayburn, he always had two sayings: a fat cow is halfway wintered, and you cannot starve a profit out of your cows. So what are you looking for when you're looking at that body condition score, and what does that tell you?
Oh, John, that's a question I've never been asked for and is way out of my league. Can you see the pictures here?
Yes, sir.
On the screen, I think that cow there's in pretty decent shape. She's already had a calf. I can't see the ribs on her. I don't see a lot of fat on her brisket or there around her rear end. To me, and I could be wrong, that's kind of the condition that I'm looking for. I fully expect her body condition to probably drop a little bit in the next month. That picture was taken on March 29th, and they're actually out grazing a hayfield there, and her body condition will probably drop just a little bit before it starts jumping back up, and I fully expect it to go back up. But
Chris, what do you think? That is she a 6? As far
I
as
think it's 6 or yeah, probably a 6. I think so.
6.5.
And she was probably closer to a 7 when she calved.
Okay.
And it may drop down to a 5 before it goes back up. Yeah, that's.
I agree with you, because you don't have that, you don't see that spine on the back. You want a kind of a smooth back end. You want to see a little bit of fat on the tail head.
Yes.
That brisket's not empty, but it's not full either. I always look at mine. You never want to drop below a 5 condition score, because that's what they call economic. Your body condition score. But once you drop below that, you're kind of getting in trouble. You're starting to see more than 2 ribs again, and it. I haven't seen recent data with feed prices going up, but back in the 2010 or so, around there, I looked at some numbers that said it's going to cost you at least $100 to bring that cow back up to to the next body condition score.
I couldn't agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In this picture here, you look at these cows here, the ones with the orange tags, their body condition score is a little bit lower. Those ones there that you see are the fall calving cows. Okay, and those are ones that's had calves on them all winter long. We're about ready to wean the calves off of them, and they've got the whole summer to get fat again. So I think their body condition score is closer to a 4 or 5, but they've got the whole summer to get conditioned back on them, and they'll start calving again in September or October. So the past 2 winters, I haven't been as hard on them as I have been in the past. Their body condition scores are actually a little bit better this year, but I've noticed if I don't pull some body condition off these fall calving cows in the winter, they may have a body condition score of an 8 by the time they calve, and then I'm going to start having issues.
Chris, I can't let you. I have a couple follow-up questions with as far as the shelled corn. Shelled corn prices have went up quite a bit recently. Is it still economical to feed that shelled corn versus just buying some more hay?
Okay, how much is hay? Right now, I'm buying corn for $7 for a 50-pound bag off a local farmer, and so if I was to buy a 50-pound bale of hay right now for $3.50, it's a wash, assuming the quality is the same, because corn has about twice the energy of hay. So that's kind of a fast and dirty way to try to calculate it. So my answer is yes, it's still very cost effective to be feeding corn right now. Right there, if you look at that picture there in the upper left-hand corner, that's how I feed my corn. I go out with a 50-pound bag. I've got my cows in 2 groups, and each group gets 50 pounds a day. I throw out 6 piles of corn, and they eat it till there's very little left. I figure the 50 pounds I feed them, they eat 48 to 49 pounds. And if you're a deer or turkey hunter, you could close your eyes and shoot and kill something, because I have lots of deer and turkeys out there. So they do a real good job cleaning that up. And I forgot what else I was going to say, JJ.
Also, you know, a lot of times we think that more is better. Like maybe when I'm throwing laundry detergent in the washing machine, how much shelled corn is too much as far as is there a limit to how much we can how many pounds of shelled corn per day we can feed cows, whereas it's going to upset the microbes in the microbe population in the rumen?
That's a great question, JJ. You could, in theory, give almost 90% of their diet in whole shelled corn and the other 10% in hay, and it is going to upset the microbes. My thoughts are, and this is a nutritionist that I heard over 30 years ago, and she once said that if you feed less than 0.5% of the body weight of the animal a day in grain, the microbes in the rumen will stay primarily forage digesting, because we either have forage or concentrate digesting bacteria in the rumens. But she said if you keep it under 0.5%, it'll stay forage digesting. So that's kind of what I've based up on over the years. I've never heard anything really definitive, but that's kind of what I go on.
Now, Chris, Ronnie Helmendollar put something in the chat. He made one statement, then he had a question, and I think we agree with the statement. At breeding time, they must be on a raising plane of nutrition. Then the question was, and what sampling are you doing regarding soil, hay, and forages to find that nutrient level in your feeds?
What am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, what do you do on your farm or at the station as far as sampling goes, to try to judge how much you need to supplement?
On my farm, I just do soil testing. I haven't done a lot of forage testing. I knew this year my hay quality was good enough to that, I didn't need to test. I was going to feed corn anyways. So I didn't test it, but in the ideal world, you would like to get a few tests, forage tests, to really find out where your protein levels at and your energy levels are at. And then you could use that as part of the conversation if you want to supplement. I saw a question earlier on about protein tubs, and I'll get on my little platform here. I'm not a proponent of protein tubs. I think it's an easy way for us to spend a lot of money to set out to make us feel better, and the cows just sit back and lick it till it's gone. It's like us eating a bunch of Snicker bars. Isn't the word that I want to use, but it's just like that. Typically speaking, our most limiting nutrients is not protein. It can be, and it was a couple years ago, but typically it's energy. And we try to think of fancy ways to try to supplement our animals. And to me, whole shell corn is probably one of the best options. Now, if you really want to improve digestibility, having it cracked in 3 or 4 kernels is going to have the highest amount of digestibility. But when I'm feeding it on the ground like this, the whole shell kernels, they seem to eat it a little better. I have people say, well, they waste an awful lot of it. I've in the past used old plastic drums cut in half. I've seen some real good feeders using 12-inch culverts, plastic culverts cut in half. Those end up working very well. But obviously we want to soil test every 3 years. We want to forage test to get a clue where we're at, and especially if we're short, we want to do that so we can try to find out exactly what and how much to supplement with.
Where do you draw the line then? Like as far as crude protein and TDN, once you get your samples back, and we're kind of lucky here because in the Western Conservation District, we're able to get 2 free forage samples, and they send off and get back. And of course, I buy all my hay, so that gives me a little room to test that and kind of maybe shop around a little bit. But where do you draw the line on when you need to supplement is crude protein and TDN with those numbers?
TDN, I'd have to check, but if I get crude protein below 7%, then I'm starting to have some issues.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I'm at. The TDN, what does it need to be? Greater than 50%, I think. I'm not sure on that, John. That's a great question. I don't have a direct answer on, but I tell you what, you know, there's an old saying, and that is the eye of the master fattens the cow. Lawrence Sanford, I don't know if any of you knew Lawrence Sanford. He was up in Noble County, one county up above Marietta, and he was our beef specialist. But if I got a pile of manure like that out in the field in the winter, I know that the quality of that is really low. You know, I probably need to be doing something. They're not getting enough proper new nutrition. So
a lot of fiber,
a lot of fiber. That's exactly right. You know, lots of lignin. When we see something like that, we've got issues. We need to be supplementing something, you know, protein or some energy or something with that diet. So, but you know, if I can get a late gestation cow that's in good body condition, you know, at least 8% crude protein in the hay, I feel pretty good about it. But the key is, you know, the key to all of this is, you know, I'm starting to look now what it's going to be like for this winter. You know, I'm already starting to plan for that. You know, the further out we can try to predict or sense if something is going to go wrong, the more options that we have to try to address it. If I now am just seeing that my cows aren't in good body condition when they're calving, I don't have a lot of options. But, you know, I was able to tell last May and June that I was going to have problems this winter, and I had more options. Now, unfortunately, if we get a 2-foot snowstorm here, the end of the month, and I'm in trouble, have to go buy some hay somewhere. I've never cut it this close with hay in my life, but it is what it is. So, John, did that kind of answer the question?
It did. You know, we need to be paying attention to where that's at. You know, if it's below an 8, or you know, get below a 9 into that 8 and below. Yeah, definitely. And you also hit something that I really like. You know, looking at the gestational periods, because you know, different gestational periods are going to have different crude protein, the TDN, and nutritional needs in general. So, but yes.
So that's why I've got my 2 groups of cows. I got the fall calving group. I got the spring calving group. The spring calving group that's calving right now, they're the middle of January. I started feeding them second cutting hay because 70% of that calf development happens in the last 2 months. So I went from feeding first cutting hay, then transitioned them to second cutting hay. And, you know, they seem to stay in real good shape. But it's funny, when I put them on that stockpiled fescue, it's amazing how their body condition goes up. And
they look pretty on stockpile fescue, don't they?
Yeah. And the lowest I've ever seen, we once sampled some stockpiled tall fescue that didn't have any nitrogen added to it on February 20th, which I was assuming around that date was when the quality would be the lowest, because it's growing right now. And the lowest I ever seen it was 6.6% crude protein. And I know I put up hay that's a lot worse than that.
Well, JJ, you want to kind of move into turning, getting away from the hay and going out to the pasture, and you know what it needs to look like?
Of course, you know, we have to play devil's advocate here, Chris. A couple things as far as tearing up pasture fields. Areas that you fed on during the winter, especially at times it got really wet. And then if we go into the 2nd, 3rd week of April and we get a lot, I mean, it gets really wet and the cows are starting to tear up pastures pretty bad. What are some options that our producers have to do with as far as rotations, supplementation? What are some of our options if we get into that emergency situation?
Well, you get into a situation where there's a lot of rain and a lot of mud, you have 3 options. One's to do nothing. One is to do a rapid rotation, or one is to confine them to a certain area and feed them supplemental feed and and use that as a sacrifice area. So those are the three options. I strictly stay, if I see any of my fields pugging up, I just speed up, I tend to speed up the rotation. I've never really had to hold them into a field and feed them extra hay once we get into spring. I do some pretty fast rotation. So if you have more paddocks, that's going to give you more options to keep moving fast, because once that spring flush of grass growth starts around when is it, around the 5th to 10th of April,
Right.
you can easily do a rotation within 2 weeks. Grass is growing that fast. So if you have 7 paddocks, you keep them in for 2 days, you can minimize the amount of pugging that is going on. So that's kind of my thoughts on it there. On this picture that you see here, this was just taken this past year. So this would have been 2020s, where I was actually feeding round bales at. You can actually see on top of that hill where I fed the round bales at. And I wish I could have had a picture of what it looks like today. Very little damage done there. Every time that I almost, not every time, but most of the times when I put new bales out, I move the hay rings, and there was not a lot of damage. Actually, where I fed at last winter, where the hay was at, the grass is green right now because the hay was so good. They ate everything. There wasn't any weeds or anything in it this past year. But around where the ring was at, it's a little bit muddy. You'll see a little bit of scarring this year. Probably by the end of the year, it'll be hard to notice. So trying to plan, I tried to feed the round bales of hay when the ground was frozen, when I was minimizing how much I would tear things up. I also square bale. So the other option that I have is I can feed one group of cows with a gator. I can put 13 square bales on that, and feed the cow square bales if it gets too muddy for the round bales. So I try to keep as many options as I can.
How far apart were you spacing the round bales there in that field? On average?
Probably 30 feet. They were probably 800-pound bales. It's a 4x5 baler with the net wrap on it. So, and they set outside. So I tend to feed those earlier in the season before they get advanced with rotting. And they ate almost everything. It was amazing. They would eat 95% or more of that hay, especially this past year with the quality is so good. The year before, there was ironweeds in there, hemp dogbane. You guys know what was in it. And so there was a little bit of weeds left over, not a lot.
Chris, we're talking about a little bit of management here.
Okay.
I think this is one of those questions. If you have a cow that she either ended up she was open, or she either aborted or lost her calf, what are your management philosophy on that? As far as you keep,
okay.
You said
Great
you have
question.
a fall calving group. Do you move her to that? Is it best to go ahead and call her, or what's your philosophy there?
I remember when I was down in Argentina once, the farmers down there said, "You give me a calf or a hide," and they actually when they would start losing their teeth, they would actually put false teeth in some of those cows. They would actually keep their cows for 20 years. So if they had a productive cow, they would keep them almost forever. One of the advantages to a fall calving herd is I have for the past 35 years stocked that herd by an open heifer or an open first calf heifer. So I would back them up. If we actually pregnancy check the 1st of November when we treat all of the cows. If I have a heifer that didn't get bred or a first calf heifer that's open, I will drop them into the fall herd. and that's how I've that's how I've been able to stock that herd. Now, what's ironic is, and this is another just farmer type scenario. 3 years ago, I put in a real good working facility, and that was the best money I ever spent in my life. And I am able now to keep much better control of my animals. I wish I could show you a picture of it, because every time that I rotate my cattle from one side of the farm to the other, I actually walk them into the holding pen, close the gate, then go open the other gate and let them on through. So they walk right in without any problem. But what I started doing was AIing first calf heifers. We would put the seeders in them and do some time breedings with them. And I've had so much luck that I am not able to stock the fall calving herd like I used to, because so many more of them are getting bred. So I think one of the take-home messages is if you have the ability to AI some of your first calf heifers to those Calvinese bulls, they seem to have less issues, and I've been getting them bred back a whole lot better with that. And JJ, I know there was another question here about when to calve to try to match with the forage season.
Yeah, I had a take into account our grass growth cycle. Of course, we won't get into warm season grasses, but I think that's a whole other ball of wax. I think a lot of producers don't realize how much crabgrass and some of our warm seasons can help out when it gets really hot in July and August. But when you look at our grass growth cycle for cool seasons, weaning weights, cow health, marketing options, and the weather, when is the best time to calve, since you've got two spring and fall calving herd?
Well,
it's not any time. Is any time the best time to calve?
Well, I think the best time to calve is within a 63-day window. To me, that's two of the best things we can do raising cattle. Is one is to have a defined calving season, and two, to have a good mineral program. But if you're looking at it from the forage aspect and the cows aspect, and folks help me out if I'm wrong here, but the brood cows typically maximizes milk production about 60 days. And our grass growth peak is probably around the 1st of May. So if we start calving in early March, that tends to match more with the forage cycle. Now I back it up just a little bit later. I didn't start calving till Saturday on the 13th, because I'm getting too old and I'm getting sick and tired of dealing with the snow and the mud. And this field that the cows were calving on, that's not the one. Is that hayfield that has a nice thick sod on it. This one here. This field here is where they're calving at. This was back on March 3rd of 2012 when I put the cows up on that field to calve. Mud and snow I don't want to deal with, and the extreme cold weather. So I'm actually not doing what I'm the perfectly, but I'm actually a couple weeks later, just because every day we get deeper into March into April is one less day of having more extreme temperatures, and the less long it's going to be. You start calving in February, you could have 2 weeks of bad weather, and if you're calving, you could have a disaster. If it happens today, you got some extreme weather, it's probably going to be gone in a couple days. So that's a big difference. So everybody's different.
Yeah, Chris, what would you say to a lot of our producers that, from their point of view, in our industry, and it doesn't matter, I think, if you're talking about for lambs, for sheep, if you're talking about cows, as far as people say, well, I'm concerned about weaning weights. I get paid whatever that calf weighs when it goes across the scales. And if I have a calf in January, I'm going to have, a bigger calf. My weaning weights are going to be a lot higher. How do you talk to someone that convince them that, hey, if you wait a little bit, you may end up not have quite as much poundage, but you may save a little money, or maybe better management. How would you respond to that?
Real good question. I have a theory, whether it's raising cattle, retirement planning, or anything else. My goal is not to maximize. My goal is to optimize. I don't need to have the highest weight. I want the most consistent weights. I don't need to top the market every time. I want to stay above the average of the market, because you're going to tend to do a lot better that way. Do I want to have 20 700-pound calves, or do I want to have 25 650-pound calves? I've had real good luck not losing any calves by waiting a little longer. Another important thing is I tend to sell to the same person every year now. You start developing a reputation after a while, where they know that they can depend on stuff, and that works. And at the stock sale we sell to up in Zanesville, the people that buy know my calves, and they tend to possibly do just a little bit better than some of them. So if they're able to calve in January and not have issues, and they're able to do that and have successful amount, a successful percentage of those, if they have a good amount of calves weaned compared to cows exposed, then that's fine. That's fine. In the type of environment that I live in and work in, my cows calve outside. They won't go near a barn. I don't want to deal with the extreme temperatures and the weather. I've got enough other things to deal with. I think I optimize the amount of pounds that I sell on the farm by calving when I do. Now, some others may do it by calving in January, but I tend to do better then. And then, the other advantage to fall calving, there's a couple advantages. One of the big disadvantages when they start calving in mid to late September is they're hard to find. If they get down in the brush and the weeds, they're really hard to find. They tend to calve a little bit lighter in the summer months while that calf is developing. The blood flow is not as great in the cows as it is in the cold weather in the winter. So they tend to calve about 10% lighter weight, but still has the same genetic potential. I really like that. I have had a lot less calving problems in the fall over my life than in the spring. It takes a lot more feed, but I tell you, when I try to sell these calves here in 3 weeks, there's going to be a lot of people looking for some calves to put out on pasture, and typically that's the highest price of the year.
Talking about price, Ronnie just chimed in with a question here. What is your overwintering price? I mean, what does it cost you to overwinter that cow? I mean, on average, I know it's kind of a hard, it's going to vary from year to year. And with that, my next question was, do you try to do anything to maximize your price? I know you're optimizing your production, but do you do anything like precondition those calves as well to try to get a little bit more on the back end?
I'll be brutally honest with you. No. Should I? Yes. I don't have the facilities to do it. And I have a person last year that just wanted them green right off the farm. And unfortunately, in other years, I've taken them up. I wait. I like to wait till the Wednesday after we get that nice flush of green grass starting to grow, take them up to the sale, and the place is packed. And I'm being honest with you. Should they be preconditioned? Yes. Is it a animal welfare issue? It can be. So there are some concerns about that. Last year, I sold them right off the farm, and they went to a farm 10 miles from me. I felt a lot better about that. How much does it cost to raise? Let me answer it to you this way. My spring calving cows typically get about 60% of a square bale a day. My fall calving cows with their calves gets about 3/4 of a square bale a day.
Well, how
Is
much is a
that,
square bale?
is,
$4.
pardon me?
What do you value a square bale hay at? And how much does it weigh?
Oh, $4 to $6 probably, JJ.
So do you think you're right around that 350 mark a year to overwinter that cow, or do you think it's less or more?
Well, if it's $3 a day and they're fed for December, January, February, so they're fed for 110 days. Yeah, it's about 330, 350. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're spot on. I agree. You know, would I be better off just to sell the hay? Yeah, I'm sure I would be. You know, you're right.
And I've seen that, especially with younger producers. They'll buy the farm and they'll get a bunch of cattle, and they're in it for about 5 to 7 years, and that then it kind of catches up with the family and the job and everything else, and then they transition to selling the hay. But then the ones that really want to do it and keep the farm alive and keep that tradition going will tread on.
You know, I'll mention some stuff that the science doesn't really talk about, or sometimes people are scared to talk about. You know, for a lot of us, this is a way of life. This is a quality of life. This helps keep me healthy. It has helped me in tax management. You know, my farm this year, and I'll be blunt with you, my farm this year before depreciation made money. You know, my accountant said, you're in good shape this year. The farm made money before tax. I mean, before depreciation, but after depreciation and stuff, it lost. But, you know, at the end of the year, I look at stuff and said, you know, did my net worth go up or down this year? You know, when you think about that, and I think my net worth went up this year. So, you know, there are intangibles we need to consider. If you're raising cattle and you can't afford shoes to put on your kids, you've got issues. But if somebody at my age, this is my exercise, this is my quality of life, and it's doing fairly good, you know, I think it's doing pretty good.
Hey, Chris, I'd just like to interject here. If anyone out there has any questions, you can jump right in. We're not just limiting this to talking about early grazing management. If you have some other questions,
you can ask me anything you want, because a seasoned extension agent always has two answers. I don't know, and it depends.
That's right.
So
it's like
I've gotten good at saying that, because as you know, sure enough, if we have an absolute answer that we know is right, there's a farmer out there that can prove me wrong. So, hey, I see Ed Rayburn's on there. Ed Rayburn, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. How are you?
Good to hear from you and see you.
I had to get to be the fly on the wall to hear what you had to say. It's been sounding pretty good.
You ready to jump on me anywhere?
Well, the only thing I would suggest people remember is, what is your elevation? Most of you folks are down at a lower elevation than I am, and everything, elevation is basically 10 days per 1,000 feet.
Yeah. I was through Princeton back in early January after the American Forage and Grassland Council. Yeah, there's a lot of difference there. But you take a look at this picture here. This was March 30th, 2014. And the day before, that's what it was like, the cattle out grazing on it. So things can change fast. But I think if you manage stuff really, you know, so much of it is the art of doing this. Sometimes we want a straight recipe on how to do this, and things change every year. You know, right now, the past week, the grass has really started growing good here. The weather forecast for next week looks fairly good. I think I'm going to be able to start rotating pastures without any issues next Saturday. And like this field here, this is a hay field that I'm going to put them in next week. And you can look in the background at the next couple paddocks behind there. You know, I may keep them in this field only for a day, then move them on. And And so that's going to keep the pugging from happening, keep them happy. Now, the downside to this is when I get all the way to the end and I've got a bunch of newborn calves, it's a challenge to move them 3/4 of a mile and keep them with the herd. So, you know, that's always an issue you don't think about. That first time or two through when the calving, it can be interesting.
What is your stocking rate there when you split up your paddocks? I know you're rotating, but I know you can increase your stocking rate and whatnot if you're really doing really high intense management, or you can just not do as much management and have a lower stocking rate. What have you found works for you?
Okay, you bring up a couple real good points there. Basically, I've got 40 brood cows on 100 and probably 140 acres. I got a lot of, I got areas that can be grazed, but I can't mow, some real steep hills and stuff. So it really varies. I found out that I'm pretty comfortable at 40 cows. I was up at 50 cows 25 years ago, and I was able to do that, but it took a lot more management, and it was becoming too much work, and my job as a county agent was a higher priority. So I backed back down to 40 to be at a comfort level. Another good issue that you brought up is I've seen two good arguments about spring grazing. Is you could do fast rotations all the way through, or you can do a set stock till that spring flush takes off, and then you can start rotating as well. So there are some that would argue about set stocking early in the season, which I don't disagree with. But when I'm calving, it's easier to find them when I have them in a smaller paddock. But then at some point, then you start a rotation with it. So I've seen the argument both ways.
So, Chris, this is Ronnie. Thanks for being on this morning. It's really good discussion. So, as you put your county agent hat on and you try to work with producers to adopt these practices and make these changes, how do you help them find that sweet spot when they say, my plan is not to feed any hay till the 1st of February? How do you work with them to find that sweet spot to say, well, maybe if I just get to the 15th of January, the 20th of March, I may have some grass left to go to jumpstart in the spring. How do you work with that?
Real good question. I was talking with one of my more progressive grazers here in the county. He said, Chris, I just can't stockpile. He said, if I stockpile, I have to give up paddocks, and I'll have to have fewer head of a cattle. In my situation, I'm able to take hay off some neighbors, and so I'm able to set some of those fields aside, and I'll take off depending on the season. It depends on the season, depends on the needs of my animals, but I'll take first cutting hay off, and then if I need to, I'll take a second cutting the hay off. If I don't need to, I will put it in a rotation, or I'll put it in a rotation once and then start stockpiling. But to me, the first step is with rotational or management intensive grazing. And this is what I told that progressive farmer is that even with rotational grazing, you're doing a little bit of stockpiling. Typically where I live at here, grass stops growing about the 15th of October, but he's able to go to the middle of November just because by the time the grass stops growing, he still has, 15 paddocks that he can put his cattle on. For 2 days at a time. So while he doesn't realize it, just by the rotational grazing, he's able to stretch it out a month just because he hadn't been grazing those paddocks. So I guess to answer your question is if you can stockpile a field and extend that grazing season 2 weeks, that's great. Just taking it a step at a time, just like what you said. But don't forget, you can stockpile on the other side, and which is what I'm doing now. It's been since that 5th of March since I've fed cattle hay. The picture on the left is the field that I got my spring calving cows in now, and you could see there that my cows were running out of stockpile grass to graze, so I was feeding them a little bit of hay. This year I'm still in real good shape with them, but then I was able to take that field off of hay in the middle of June. So I like what you said. If we can do stuff incrementally, if we can pick up a week or two on the other side, on either side, we're making great progress.
Chris, we really appreciate you coming on and speaking. We're kind of running out of time here. We're going to have to kind of conclude this segment of the Cowboy Coffee Break, but we
JD,
really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
I got 3 more questions for Chris, but they're fast questions.
Okay.
All right.
Because we have to, of course, we grill, or I sent Chris a message. We want to percolate some conversation, because Chris, as learning from my dad, there's 2 types of music, country and Western. So first we need to know, who is your favorite country artist?
Garth Brooks.
Garth Brooks. Oh, the big 90s. And then what is your favorite country song?
Save a horse, ride a cowboy. How's that?
Well, okay. Move on.
I like some Hank. I like a lot of Hank Jr. songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yep.
I'm more of a Waylon Jennings. He's kind of my favorite, but
well, we do have a good country Western station now here in Southeast Ohio, 100.9.
Oh, okay.
WJAW. Yep.
There was one question that, if you can real quick talk over the problem that sometimes I run into and some producers I work with. How do you manage first calf heifers as far as calving, early grazing season, keeping body condition and that nature?
Okay. I'm not doing it just right. I'm doing what works for me. We AI'd the spring calving heifers a few days before I turned the cows out. So I actually of my six spring calving heifers, I only managed to get 2 of them AI'd this year, but they were AI'd to a Calvingese bull. They came without any issues Saturday and Sunday. The other 4 were bred later. So they're going to be a little bit bigger. I haven't had calving problems with first calf heifers when they calve a little bit later. I actually had my first calf heifers in with my fall cows this winter, where they were getting a little higher quality hay through January, and basically they got about 40% of their diet was second cutting hay, and the other 60% was good first cutting hay, plus some corn every day. So my fall cows for most of the winter gets better quality hay than my spring, until my spring calving cows are ready to calve, then they get good second cutting. So they were actually in real good condition. There's probably more things I should do, but everything's a balance. It's, one of the big things about agriculture is not what's right and what's wrong. It's which wrong is most right. And that's things we have to balance with. So I try to give them a little better nutrition than typically my spring cows will get.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Well, I think that's about a wrap for this show. But thank you very much for joining us on the Cowboy Coffee Break, and we really appreciate you. Well, we have to have you back again talking about another topic.
Glad to be on. And JJ, if you ever get a quick cancellation, you know how to reach me.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So I gotta go home. I gotta go home and check on a cow with a prolapsed vagina now. So hopefully she's all right.
They say everybody wants to be a cowboy to a time to do cowboy stuff.
Well, everybody, all the kids in the county want to help me put up hay till it's time to do it. Then they're busy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, thank you for having us. I think
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
we're going to
Thanks,
go ahead
my
and pause
friends.
it right there. And I think Ronnie wanted to hold off and had a couple questions for us personally, but
Okay.
we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, my friends.
Thank you, Chris. See you, buddy.